Okay, hello everyone. As I said, on Wednesday we are not gonna have in-person class, so today I'm gonna do my lecture with the Zoom, recorded Zoom. Thanks for your understanding. Before we get started, we are supposed to read Charles Dickens's Stink and Fog. So, so you may read that one. So I will introduce some events in Victorian period. First of all, on 1858, there was an incident which is called the Great Stink in central London. So it was the environmental disaster. So, for example, because of the very severe pollution in the River Thames, there was a very bad stink in London, and it was really, really severe, more than we imagined. So, many people died because of the stink. Can you imagine it? Well, it was the fact, and so many people died because of stink, and the function of the city, well, it's entirely stopped because of the stink. And here in Wikipedia, you can see that the term in the miasma or miasma, right? Miasma is the term that indicates this kind of pollution of things, right? It is like the miasma, it penetrates or permeates the whole city with invisible smell. So this is one of the examples that Charles Dickens is portraying in his essay or diary. And in that essay, Dickens says that that is because of the so many pollutants in the River Thames. And this environmental problem is still ongoing. So River Thames is considered one of the most polluted river in the world. About 100 years later, we can also find the presence of the smoke, and it is called the Great Smoke. So it is 1952. There was a severe air pollution in London, England, and because of that, people literally could not see anything. And this is because of the use of coal, right? When we read D.H. Lawrence, we learned the importance of coal in Victorian era, right? It is the impulse of Great Britain. And because of that, there was a very thick layer of smoke over the city, and it lasts from Friday 5 December to Tuesday 9 December 1952. And just like the stink, the Great Smoke also indicates the role of industrialization in Great London, Great Britain. So because of that, the whole country was stopped and many people also died because of that. So here you can see 100,000 injured, and it's a 1952 government estimate, but also very unknown number affected by breathing difficulties, lung cancers, and kind of pneumonia, something like that. So it was a very big problem in Great Britain. So Charles Dickens is also indicating this kind of the prevailing fog in London. So it was a very big uh, environmental issues in England, and it was vividly represented in many modernist works. Very good. And let's go to the text again. So last time, no, it's not the text. Okay, so last time we finished the class with question number 2. So let's go to number 3. Think about the role of nature represented in page 41. So on page 41, we can see how Redcliffe Hall is conceptualizing nature, and it is here, this paragraph. So let's begin with this one. And because she loved this kind English valley, Stephen's sulky eyes must turn and rest upon it. Not all her apprehension and sense of injustice could take from her eyes the joy of the sitting seeing. She must gaze and gaze. She must let it possess her, the peace, the wonder that lay in such beauty. And the unwilling uh, tears welled up under her lids, she not knowing why they had come there. So here, Stephen, as a queer woman, she is under the oppression of Victorian gender role, right? But in this such a beauty of nature, she sheds a tear. So the only solace for Stephen is just nature. Nature is uh, the friend of nature. I mean, Stephen. So you can see the close connection between Stephen's queerness, queer identity, and Victorian, no, the nature itself, right? They are both under the, they are both victims of patriarchy, and they both stand together in this paragraph. And let's go to the question number 4. Explain how Miss Defoe thinks Stephen. Why does she call Stephen as Amazonic? So it's page 47. Uh, let's go to the here. So Mademoiselle Defoe is a woman who teach Stephen, right? And she is a French woman. She is an educated woman. So she is an avatar. She's the representation of the new woman in Victorian period. And here, Defoe acknowledges Stephen's own uh, potential for what? Well, for me, this is an Amazonic. You know what Amazon is, right? It is a female warriors in ancient Greek. So here, Miss Defoe rather acknowledges that Stephen can be a good man, no, good person, or good, athlete, or something like that. So it is a kind of the affirmation of Stephen's own sexual identity and Stephen's own physical ability, right? And what is sandowing? In page 49, you can see that Stephen wants to do this one, sandowing. So here Stephen says, I'm not going for sandowing. She informed him as though they were discussing a career. He left. He means her father. Sandowing? Well, and how will you start it? So let's focus on her father's reaction. Sandowing? He laughs. Because sandowing is not the thing for the girl. And what is sandowing? You may find it on Wikipedia. So sandowing is from an activity or working out from Eugene Sando, and you can see his masculine bodies, right? So this is a kind of the bodybuilding, right? And so Stephen, even though she's a girl, she wants to do bodybuilding. And for her father, this is very funny things or ridiculous thing. You're a girl, but you want to do sandal? Haha, that's the reaction. And it depicts Stephen's own desire for a very ideal body, right? As a woman in the Victorian period, just like Violet represents, the ideal body of a woman is kind of the thin and weak body, right? But for Stephen, no, her ideal body is muscular and very manly. So it also depicts Stephen's own desire for different sexual identities. And consider the relationship between Stephen and Referee in context of queer ecofeminism. Also explain Anna's own reaction to this relationship. So it's page on 50, and here Stephen is thinking about her own horse. Yeah, so this is the paragraph beginning with the hunter. Yes, so this paragraph. The hunter, when he came, was gray-coated and slender, and his eyes were as soft as an Irish morning, and his courage was as bright as an Irish sunrise, and his heart was as young as the wild heart of Ireland, but devoted and loyal and eager to service, and his name was sweet on the tongue as you spoke it, being referee after the poet. So this is the portrayal of the horse referee. Stephen loved referee and referee loved Stephen. It was love at first sight, and they talked to each other for hours in his loose box, not in Irish or English, but in a quiet language, having very few words, but many small sounds and many small movements. So they love each other and they are using a kind of alternative language, right? This is not human language, but this is kind of the gesture and love. So there you can find a kind of alternative communication language between a non-human and the queer. And the important and interesting thing is that it is this paragraph. So here, Redcliffe Hall is also portraying uh, Anna. Anna, and when they got home, there was Anna waiting to pet a referee because she could not resist him. So Anna also loves referee the horse. Because, being Irish, her hands love to feel fine for horseflesh under their delicate fingers. And because she did very much want to be tender to Stephen and understanding. But as Stephen dismounted, bespattered and disheveled, and yet with the perspective looks of her father, the words that Anna had been planning to speak died away before they could get themselves spoken. She shrank back from the child. The child was too overjoyed at that moment to perceive it. So Anna wants to pet the referee and Anna wants to love Stephen, but something she cannot understand exists in Stephen and referee. This is, well, how can I say? This is the kind of the displeasure constructed by gender role. Stephen is not normal to Anna, so Anna cannot love her own daughter. And in this sense, we also should focus on Anna is also a victim of patriarchy. Anna wants to love her own daughter, but she cannot because for in her mind, Victorian gender role is so fixed. So Anna can be also a victim of patriarchy. She is the subject constructed by Victorian gender role. And explain the conversation between Philip and Stephen. Switch page 52. No. Yep. But I am not your son, father. But I am not your son, father, she said very slowly, and even as she said it, her heart felt heavy. Heavy, and as it had not done for years, not since she was quite a small child. And at this he looked back at her with love in his eyes, love and something that seemed like compassion. And their looks met and mingled and held for a moment, speechless yet somehow expressing hurts. Her own eyes clouded and she started at her boots, ashamed of the tears that she felt might overflow. She said this went on, speaking more quickly as though anxious to cover her confusion. You are all the son that I've got, he told her. You are brave and strong-limbed, but I want you to be wise. I want you to be wise for your own sake, Stephen, because that the best life requires a great wisdom. I want you to learn to make friends of your books. Someday you may need them because, he hesitated, because you mayn't find life at all easy. We none of us do, and books are good friends. So, Stephen does not want to study, right? But Her father wants her to study. And this is because he is very worried about her future. Because you may find life at all easy, we none of us do, and books are good friends. So it may Philip, Sir Philip overshadows Stephen's own future and its difficulties, right? And in about 10 lines later, Stephen says, "But you've now got to prove that my judgment's been sound. We've both got to prove it to ourselves and to your mother. She's been very patient with my unusual method." So this is a kind of quest of Stephen and her father. They need to prove themselves. They need to prove they are not wrong in this world, right? Next, consider the relationship between Stephen and referee in context of queer ecofeminism. I don't know. Yeah, this one. Consider Stephen's growing up. Explain the role of nature in her growing up. So again, the issue of nature begins with page 59. Mathematics and algebra, Latin and Greek, Roman history, Greek history, geometry, botany, they reduce Stephen's mind to a species of beehive in which every bee buzzed on the least provocation. She would gaze at Miss Puddleton in a kind of amazement, that tiny square box to hold all this grim knowledge. And seeing the gaze, Miss Puddleton would smile her most warm, charming smile, and would say as she did so, "Yes, I know, but it's only the first effort, Stephen. Presently your mind will get neat like the schoolroom, and then you will be able to find what you want without all this rummaging and bother." But her tasks being over, Stephen must often slip away to visit Referee in the stables. "Oh, Referee, I'm hating it so," she would tell him. "I feel like you'd feel if I put you in harness, hard wooden shaft and kicking strap. Referee, but my darling, I'd never put you into harness." So after finish her study, Stephen goes to her horse, Referee, and says, "I've never put you into harness." We need to think about the role of education in this scene, right? Stephen is now growing up, so she must learn something. Especially, she has her father's own expectations, so she must prove herself for her father and for herself. And this education is a kind of the burden for Stephen. But after finishing study, she goes to referee. She goes to the being in the nature, and she identifies herself with the horse, referee. So she says, "Oh, referee, I'm hating it so. I feel like you'd feel if I put you in harness, right? So I'd never put you into harness." This is Stephen's own pure identity and its connection with non-humans. They are all under the civilization, and Stephen decides not to put referee into harness. And let's go to the next question. Think about referee and compare it with Virginia Woolf's body. So it's page 62, the very last paragraph of chapter 7. And referee, who was not really thinking of the corn bean, but rolling his eye in an effort to answer, would want to say something too big for his language, which at best must consist of small sounds and small movements, would want to say something about a strong feeling he had that Stephen was missing the truth. But how could he hope to make her understand the age-old wisdom of all the dumb creatures? The wisdom of plains and primeval forest, the wisdom come down from the youth of the world. So here, the narrative says referee has his own ideas, wisdom, and this is from the wisdom, and this is from primeval forest. In version of Flush, the narrative begins with history of spaniel, history of dog, right? And in this novel, Redcliffe Hall is describing about wisdom of knowledge, I mean, the knowledge of wisdom and knowledge of the horse, which is inherited from the primal forest. So here we can also find the very important concept of nature, right? Nature has its own world and it is different from human being. And we human cannot entirely know what it is. So humans world and animals world, they are different. And even though we can communicate each other, we cannot entirely grasp it. We can entirely conceive, understand the non-human, the world of non-humans. And explain Stephen's self-consciousness in page 64. So here, the paragraph is begins with this days. Yeah, here. So this is the passage about clothes. And here you can see how Stephen conceives herself with clothes. Nevertheless, it was open of warfare, the inevitable clash of two opposing natures who sought to express themselves in apparel, since clothes, after all, are a form of self-expression. So, Stephen wants to wear the male clothes, while her mother, Anna, does not want that. So this is kind of the warfare. But for Stephen, clothes, apparel is a form of self-expression, right? So it is not sex, but it is the gender, right? Biologically, Stephen has a woman's female body, but she is constructing her gender by wearing male clothes. But at the same time, it gives a kind of different, well, how can I say, very awkward for Stephen's own self-consciousness. So then off she would rush and put it on all overall, so that Anna would sigh in a kind of desperation and would pat, readjust, unfasten, and fasten, striving to make peace between wearer and model, whose inimical feelings were evidently mutual. Came a day when Stephen was suddenly outspoken. It's my face, she announced. Something's wrong with my face. So Stephen is looking at her own face, but she finds out that something is wrong with her face. Throughout the narrative, we can find that Stephen felt kind of distance with her own body and with her own face, something like that. And this is because her own self-consciousness is not based on Victorian gender role, right? So she feels herself as a kind of alienated being, right? So, if so, what is supposed to do for her? And a few lines later, Stephen is thinking about God. So here, so I'm terribly unhappy, dear, improbable God. Would not be very propitious beginning, and yet at this moment she was wanting a God and tangible one, very kind and paternal. A God with white flowing beard and white forehead, a benevolent parent who would lean out of heaven and turn his face aside the better to listen from his cloud, upheld by cherub and angels. And she wanted was a wise old family God surrounded by endless heavenly relations. In spite of her troubles, she began to laugh weakly, and the laughter was good for it killed self-pity. nor can it have offended that vulnerable person whose image persists in the ears of small children. So here Stephen is thinking about God, but this God is definitely different from Christian God, right? She needs her own God who willingly hears Stephen's own expression. So here again, as we talked on Monday, the issue of spirituality and God reappears, and it will be repeatedly discovered throughout the whole narrative. Yeah, so we talked about this God, right? This is different from Christian God, right? And number three, think about Martin and Stephen's relationship. Why does Stephen like it? It's page 82 and 83. What is the center of their friendship? So Stephen finally meets uh, Martin and she likes him. Let's go to the page 82, and this is the paragraph begins with Martin live, yeah, here in British Columbia. And then he talked. Yes, from here. So then he talked of the vastness of that new country that was yet so old, of its snow-capped mountains, of its canyons and gorges, and its deep, princely rivers, of its lakes, above all, of its mighty forest. And when Martin spoke of those mighty forests, his voice changed. It became almost reverential. For this young man loved trees with a primitive instinct, with a strange and inexplicable devotion. Because he liked Stephen, he could talk of his trees, and because she liked him, she could listen while he talked, feeling that she too would love his great forest. So they becomes friends because they both love forest and trees. This is the bond between two nature lovers. Martin loves trees, Stephen loves trees, right? So because they both the man and woman of nature, they can genuinely, sincerely communicate. But why does Stephen refuse Martin's love? That is also the question, right? The reason is that this is not love for Stephen, right? On page 83 here, the Martin wished to learn about her, and they talked of her fencing, her studies, her writing, and she told him about a referee who was named for the poet. So they are talking about everything. And all the while she felt unnatural and happy because here was a man who was taking her for granted, who appeared to find nothing eccentric about her or her taste, but who quite simply took her for granted. So Martin is accepting Stephen as she is. So for Stephen, this is the first experience of being friends with a man. So he is so happy. So this is friendship, right? But for Martin, it's not. So it's page 91. So on page 91, oh, okay. Yeah, here, so in reality, it had been no more than that. The friend had turned lover and had wanted from her what she could not give him, or indeed any man, because of that deep repugnance. So, what Martin wants is what she cannot give him. That means while Martin desire for Stephen's love, but for Stephen, no. It's just friendship, and this is a kind of the well, how can I say? The the natural communication between different sexualities. So for Stephen, her friendship with Martin is possible because it is based on nature. But for Martin, no, this is sexual love. After refusing Martin's love, Stephen goes to her father and asks about her sexual identity. For Stephen, this question is the question that even God should not ask. What does it mean? So he found out that Martin loved her as a woman, and then Stephen was so shocked, so she refused Martin's love. And she goes to the father. And it's page 95. Yeah. Here. So um, after she had spoken for quite a long time, she at length found the courage to ask her question. Is there anything strange about me, father, that I should have felt as I did about Martin? It had come. It fell on his heart like a blow. The hand that was shading his pale face trembled, for he felt the great tremble take hold of his spirit. His spirit shrank back and cowered in his body so that it dared not look out on Stephen. She was waiting, and now she was asking again, Father, is there anything strange about me? I remember when I was a little child, I was never quite like all the other children. And then, after a few lines, here, oh, Stephen, my little Stephen, he wanted to cry out against God for this thing. He wanted to cry out, you have made my Stephen. What did I done, or my father before me, or my father's father, or his father's father? On to the third and fourth generations, and Stephen was waiting for his answer. Then Sir Philip set the lips of his spirit to the cup, and his spirit must drink the gall of deception. I will not tell her. You cannot ask it. There are some things that even God should not ask. So this is the Stephen's question about her own sexuality, her own queer sexuality, right? And then it was, well, kind of unsacred question at this time, right? So, well, Sir Philip says it is the question that God should not ask, and he cannot give a definite answer to Stephen, even though he knows that Stephen's sexual identity is different from heterosexual. So let's read further. And now he turned around and deliberately faced her. Smiling right into her eyes, he lied glibly. My dear, don't be foolish. There's nothing strange about you. Someday you may meet a man you can love. And supposing you don't, well, what of it, Stephen? Marriage isn't the only career for a woman. I've been thinking about your writing just lately, and I'm going to let you go to Oxford. But meanwhile, you mustn't get foolish fancies and want to at all. It's not like you, Stephen. She was gazing at him, and he turned away quickly. Darling, I'm busy. You must leave me, he faltered. Thank you, he said very quietly and simply. I felt that I had to ask you about Martin. And in the section 3, after she had gone, she sat on alone, and the lie was still bitter to his spirit as he sat there, and he covered his face for the shame that was in him. But because of the love that was in him, he wept. So he cannot, Sir Philip cannot tell what he knows about Stephen, right? It is outside the Victorian gender role. Consider the representation of Morton. Explain the dynamics between Stephen, nature, and her family history. It's page 97. Okay, this paragraph. And now she is thinking about her family and her house. She belonged to the soil. Okay, from here. She belonged to the soil and the fruitfulness of Morton, to its pastures and paddocks, to its farms and its cattle, to its quiet and gentlemanly ordered traditions, to the dignity and pride of its old red brick house that was yet without ostentation. To these things, she belonged and would always belong by right of those past generations of Gordons whose thoughts had fashioned the comeliness of Morton, mm, whose bodies had gone to the making of Stephen. Yes, she was of them, those bygone people. They might spurn her, the lusty breeders of sons that they had been. They might even look down from heaven with raised eyebrow and say, "We utterly refuse to acknowledge this curious creature called Stephen." But for all that, they could not drain her of blood, and her blood was theirs also, so that they, yeah, they, wait, where's that? So that do what they would, they could never completely rid themselves of her, nor she of them. They were one in their blood. So first of all, Stephen belongs to Gordon's people and Gordon's nature. And perhaps her ancestors do not like her. They might refuse Stephen. But nevertheless, Stephen is part of this family. They cannot erase Stephen, right? We can extend this metaphor to Victorian society. Okay, they cannot acknowledge the presence of queer people, right? But they are queer. The queer is also part of England, right? We cannot erase them. That is, it is a kind of challenge to Victorian gender role, Victorian society, and it's a challenge to that kind of oppression. So rather, this is Stephen's own decision to live as the queer because she shared the same blood with her own ancestors and this land. And number two, Stephen is considered outlaw on page 98. Then what is the law? Explain it with the meaning of nature. Page 98. Yeah, so but his oath could not save Stephen now from her neighbors. Nothing could do that since the going of Martin. Were quite unknown to themselves, they feared her. It was fear that aroused their antagonism. In her, they instinctively sensed an outlaw, and theirs was the task of policing nature. Well, have you heard about the term natural law? Well, in many cases, in many histories, and in many literal representations, nature is conceived as a kind of law. But Stephen is considered an outlaw. That means Stephen is not natural. Well, so we need to distinguish two different meaning of nature here. First of all, nature is a place for Stephen's own queer identity. Nature gives her a solace, right? Nature is a friend of Stephen's queer identity, sexuality. At the same time, there is the kind of the consensus of traditional concept of nature, right? Men should do something. Women should do something. This law, this social principle becomes a law and it is functioning as a kind of the oppressive law in this period. So in this phrase, law means nature, and at the same time, this law is and it indicates the Victorian oppressive gender role to the queer identity. And explain Anna and Philip's argument in page 99. So this is the very bottom of the last paragraph in page 99. And at this, Anna broke out in angry protest. Why shouldn't Stephen marry? She wished her to marry. Was he mad? And what did he mean by disaster? No woman was ever complete without marriage. What on earth did he mean by disaster? He frowned and refused to answer her question. Stephen, he said, must go up to Oxford. He has set his heart on a good education for the child who might someday become a fine writer. Marriage wasn't the only career for a woman. Look at Pottle, for instance. She'd been at Oxford, a most admirable, well-balanced, sensible creature. Next year he was going to send Stephen to Oxford. Anna scoffed. Yes, indeed, he might well look at Pottle. She was what came of this higher education, a lonely, unfulfilled middle-aged spinster. Anna didn't want that kind of life for her daughter. So here, Philip and Anna is fighting. So Philip says Stephen won't marry and she will go to Oxford and get higher education. And Anna does not understand, right? For her, as a representative Victorian woman, the only path, only life journey in a woman's life is to marry. So here, Anna says no woman was ever complete without marriage. For her, marriage is a definite required step for a woman. Without marriage, woman is incomplete. It is what she says, right? So here, while Anna is obsessed with Victorian gender role, no. Sir Philip wants her daughter to overcome, to transcend this oppressive gender role. So you can also find the conflict between Anna and Stephen and Sir Philip. So page one, scroll, close reading. Page 112 to 130 and explain the relationship between Stephen and non-humans. So writing on, she felt utterly spent and bewildered. This paragraph, and let's skip several lines and then let's go to the mercy that he had taught her through the mighty adventure of death. With a sudden illumination of vision, she perceived that all life is only one life, that all joy and all sorrow are indeed only one, that all death is only one die. And she knew that because she had seen a man die in a great suffering, yet with courage and love that are deathless, she could never again inflict wanton destruction or pain upon any poor, helpless creature. So, Stephen is finding out that her human activity can bully non-humans. So, she learns the value of life, and especially the value of non-human life. So she decides not to kill non-humans. And so it was that by dying to Stephen, Sir Philip would live on in the attributes of mercy that had come that day to his child. But the body is still very far from the spirit, and it clings to the primitive joys of the earth, to the sun and the wind and the good rolling grasslands, to the swift relations of reckless movement, so that Stephen, with a referee between her strong knees, was suddenly filled with regret. Yes, in this her moment of spiritual insight, she was indefinitely sad, and she said to referee, "We'll never hunt anymore. We two referee will never go out hunting together anymore." So she says to referee that we will not go to hunting because I'm not gonna kill any, well, non-humans, weak non-humans. And let's focus on the reaction of referee. And because in his own way he had understood her, she felt his sides swell with a vast, resigned sigh, heard the creaking of damp girth leather as he sighed because he had understood her. For the love of the chase was still hot in revelry, the love of splendid, unforeseen danger, the love of crisp mornings and frost-bound evenings and long, dusky roads that always led home. He was wise with the age-old wisdom of the beast. It is true that wisdom was not guiltless of slaying, and deep in his gentle and faithful mind lurked the memory bequeathed him by some wild forebear. So, referee understands Stephen, but referee sympathizes Stephen. But in his body, in his blood, he also have a very active and violent instinct, right? So again, we can see the two different characteristics of between human beings and animals. First of all, referee sympathize, but at the same time, referee has his own activity, so he wants to run. Instinct and consciousness, they both exist in animals. Because of that, Stephen knows what it means. So the very last line, Stephen bent forward and patted his neck. "I'm sorry, sorry, referee," she said gravely. She knows that referee wants to go to hunt and run with Stephen, but she will not because hunting is an activity to kill animal. So she says, "I'm sorry, sorry, referee." Think about the portrayal of Angela, how she conceptualized by Stephen. So it's page 128. They left him and wandered away through the gardens, and quite soon, poor referee was almost forgotten, for the garden smelled softly of nice scent and stalk of other pale flowers that smelled sweetest that evening, and Stephen was thinking that Angela Crosby resembled such flowers. Very fragrant and pale she was, so Stephen said to her gently, "You seem to belong to Morton." Angela smiled a slow, questioning smile. "You think so, Stephen?" And Stephen answered, "I do, because Morton and I are one." And she scarcely understood the portent of her words, but Angela, understanding, spoke quickly. "Oh, I belong nowhere. You forget I am the stranger." So Stephen fell in love with Angela, and we need to consider why. And because Stephen says, "You seem to belong to Morton." So Angela, just like Martin, Angela is also a woman of nature. She seems to belong to Morton's nature. And Stephen also says, Morton and I are one. So they both belong to Morton. Because of that, Angela and Stephen fall in love each other because they are both women or women of nature. Now let's go to the second question. Think about the meaning of home and family in page 137. For Stephen, they do not belong to him. Why? Mm, the night, the night, yeah, here. For that, let's imagine this protection. Here, protection. She could never offer protection to the creature she loved. Could you marry me, Stephen? She could neither protect nor defend nor honor by loving. Her hands were completely empty. She who would gladly have given her life must go empty-handed to love, like a beggar. She could only debase what she longed to exalt, defile what she longed to keep pure and untarnished. This is a very central question of Stephen. Stephen conceives herself as a man, so she wants to protect her lover, just like other main characters. But in fact, she finds out that she cannot never offer protection to the creature she loved. So it is based on her own construction of gender, right? While she conceives herself as a man, but she is a woman in this society. So her expected role in Victorian era is a woman, not a man. So she cannot offer the protection to her lover, right? The night would gradually change to dawn, and the dawn would shine in at Opal's window, bringing with it the intolerable singing of birds. Stephen, look at us, we're happy. So this is the song of birds. And a few lines later, from here, home. That meant home and two people together, respected because of their honorable living. Two people who had had the right of love in their youth, and whom old age had not divided. Two poor and yet infinitely invaluable people without stain, without shame in the eyes of their fellows. Proud people who could face the world unafraid, having no need to fear that word's execration. So here you can see the definition of home and family. Home means two people together respected because of their honorable living, right? And they have right to love. Can we say that Stephen has this right to love, right to live with her lover? No, because she is a woman and marriage between same sexes is officially banned. It is illegal. So there's no way to live with her lover for Stephen. So home is rather a very alienated space for Stephen. Her home is not her home, right? Because home means the two lovers together, respected because of their honorable living, right? But Stephen's life is not honorable, and she cannot live with her lovers. Slide 21, right? Think about meeting up. Yeah, let's finish this class by finishing this slides. Think about Poto's statement in page 138, and let's do close reading. So Poto is a friend. I mean, she's a governess, but at the same time, she's a friend. There were times when Poto felt almost desperate, right? And one evening, she came to a great resolution. She'd go to the girl and say, I know all about it. You can trust me, Stephen. And then she would counsel and try to give courage. You are neither unnatural, nor abominable, nor mad. You are as much a part of what people call nature as anyone else. Only you're unexplained as yet. You've not got your niche in creation, but someday that will come. And meanwhile, don't shrink yourself, but just face your calmly and bravely. Have courage. Do the best you can with your burden, but above all, be honorable. Cling to your honor for the sake of those others who share the same burden. For their sakes, show the world that people like you and they can be quite as selfish as fine as the rest of mankind. Let your life go to prove this. It would be a really great life work, Stephen. So, Fudo, as a friend of Stephen, well, gives very good and important comments to Stephen. You're neither unnatural, so you mean you're natural, right? Nor abominable, nor mad. You are as much a part of what people call nature as anyone else, only you're unexplained as yet, right? So for Poodle, Stephen is rather natural as much as other people, other normal people, other heterosexual people, right? And you are just unexplained. Let's think about unexplained. That means in the future, she will also be explained, right? So this is kind of the very hopeful message to Stephen, right? Stephen, I mean, Kodo thinks that for someday there will be the world that acknowledges Stephen's, well, minor sexualities. That world will come, right? So until then, cling to your honor for the sake of those others who share the same burden. And Todo's message is very important. You're not alone. There are many people who share the same burden. It reminds us of the very important modernist concept in feminism, the bond between minorities, right? Stephen is not alone. There are so many people who share this, uh, well, burden. They will stand together. So it emphasizes uh, the bond between different minorities, right? And before we go to page 154, that is, oh no, let's go to the last question, page 154. So here we need to focus on Mr. Williams's statement. I don't believe in no heavenly horse neither. There won't be no horse in heaven. And a good thing too, judging by the description. Well, this is a very good question for our future plan. This is my last question. So please write your, please write your answer under this video as a reply. This is kind of homework and you don't have to write it very long. Just you can write just yes or no and please write very briefly about your opinion. My question is, can animals go to heaven? Can animal goes to heaven? The answer is, and there's no definite answer, right? But my question is, can animals go to heaven? Please write your response on this video, YouTube reply. And because this question is really important in reading E.M. Forster's A Passage to India. In that time, I mean, about a few weeks later, we are going to talk about animal and heaven. And this question is already depicted in this novel, right? So please offer your answer on this video. And that will be your class attendance, right? Thank you very much. And I hope you had a very good luck in your midterm paper. See you on next Monday. Bye.